Welcome to the STR Data Lab.
Hello and welcome to the STR Data Lab. I'm Jamie Lane, Chief Economist at AirDNA, and I'm joined today by Alex Alioto.
Yes, very well done. Very well done.
The head of growth at Whimstay. Alex, welcome to the show, and sorry for butchering your last name.
You did a really good job. Jamie, what's up, man? Nice to see you.
Nice to see you as well. It's been a little while since we've last chatted, and I feel like I see you around on the conference circuit. Whimstay has been a mainstay of the industry for quite a while now. So really excited to get you on and talk about what you guys are up to.
I'm stoked to be here, man. I appreciate it. I think let's let the crowd know that. So I think it might have been the first time we met. We were at a conference. We were on a dais, if you want to call it that, right? For a conference, okay. And I believe it was the fourth day of a 4-day conference, and it was maybe the last session. And it was it wasn't anybody in our industry. So it was all hedge fund. I believe it was like B of A hedge fund folks in San Francisco, you and I on a dais. And then there was like a dinner theater feel to it because like they were eating. So it was like the noise of plate on fork action. Okay. You're dropping data, my assumption is hedge fund people want to hear data. So I think they were quite interested in what you were talking about. I, on the other hand, was spouting some platitudes about how great our industry is. I don't think they really cared about that too much. So at any rate, I think that was kind of the first time I had known who you were, but that was sort of the first time that you and I hung out. That was what, 3 years ago, maybe?
Yeah, I think 2 or 3 years ago. And then we were on a conference with Operto, which was awesome. I think we've maybe done that once or twice. So yeah.
Twice we've done that with those crazy kooks.
Yeah, and maybe like for those that don't know who Whimstay is, can you give a quick overview of the platform?
Yeah, so we're an OTA, and we are the only OTA, I could say leading OTA for last minute. So we're the leading last minute channel in the short-term rental industry. So we only do last minute. We only focus on short-term rentals. And so if you're a host, excuse me, you use us to fill unsold gap nights last minute. If I'm a traveler, I'm looking for a last minute, spontaneous minded traveler, let's say, and I'm looking for a last minute deal, I go to Whimstay, and it's kind of a win-win. That's the idea.
So similar, like my favorite hotel OTA is Hotel Tonight. Similar concept.
Yes, yeah. The exact same concept. And that's the beautiful elevator pitch is when I can just say it's Hotel Tonight for short-term rentals. And for people that are total civilians that still call any short-term rental an Airbnb, it's we're Hotel Tonight for Airbnbs. That's unfortunately how I have to describe it more oftentimes than not, to be honest. So, but yes,
and even more ironic that Airbnb owns Hotel Tonight too.
Yeah. There it is. I don't know what they've done with it, frankly. It was one of my favorite. It was Sam, the CEO, is a lovely guy, and it's a really cool product. And I don't know. I'd still use it, but it seems to have gotten buried a little bit. I don't know, which is too bad.
Yeah, definitely buried a little bit. I use it. I used it. I was in DC on Monday and used it for. It's great for me because I travel so much and forget to book my hotel. And,
yeah, you're not alone, dude. You're not alone. Yeah. Sometimes our app is good for folks that are sort of I would say spontaneous on purpose, and then there are those that are just accidental. Oh shit! So yeah.
So I was really excited to have you on because of what's been going on recently with booking windows. The name of the game right now is uncertainty. The current administration has this, I guess it's a strategy around strategic uncertainty. And in general, when I think of uncertainty, I think of don't plan. You think of if you can delay, you do. And I've been looking at lead times, and what do I see is people delaying, people waiting to the last minute to book, especially on the lower end of the travel spectrum. So like budget properties right now, we're seeing a 20% reduction in lead times. And in general, like when I talk with vacation rental managers, like they're used to like typical beach lead time pre-COVID was like 2.5 months. Like that's a great lead time to be able to plan your inventory around. Uh, Post COVID 2022 is like got down to like 65 nights, which is still over 2 months, like a little few weeks shorter. And now we're down below 60 nights. It's like 55 nights on average. And we're seeing that shrink even further as we get throughout 2025. So, and one question for you is like, how have you guys seen like vacation rental managers sort of react to shortening booking lead times, and like how does that sort of play into you guys starting Whimstay?
So we started the company, I don't 4.5 years ago now, I think, maybe five, just sort of just on the tail end of COVID, and we started it based on necessity. So my co-founder, my partner Ben, um, he he was a brilliant businessman. He's done exceptionally well in Silicon Valley, and he sort of was 40, late 40s, and sort of semi-retired. Had a home in Maui, had a home in Truckee, and in North Lake Tahoe, and it kind of has that inquisitive business mind where he was recognizing that these homes were just not getting rented out, and there really wasn't a strategy for getting them rented out last minute, other than throwing a discount on there and hoping that somebody sees it, and hope's not much of a strategy. So I think that's when his mind started to work, right? And why isn't there an option for me to be able to dislodge, let's call it expiring inventory, right? And if you look across any industry, that it is a we're not reinventing the wheel at Whimstay, right? Like every industry has their kind of overstock model. Let's say that, right? Nordstrom has Nordstrom Rack, grocery outlet. We got all those outlets that you go to for Calvin Klein and whatever. That's all that is, right? So it's an opportunity to make money rather than not making money, right? That's it. Found money for the most part. So that was the reason that we started it. We came at the time of COVID. And I think what's really interesting, here's my tie-in, is that if you look at what's happening right now, there is a COVID-ish feel to it to me. I'm going to call it COVID light because it's not driven by economic. It's driven more by economic uncertainty, obviously, rather than health concerns. But I think we're seeing a lot of the same thing, right? So we're witnessing this kind of notable shift as Americans kind of they're sort of increasingly adjusting travel plans in response to these kind of economic pressures, right? So we're seeing consumer behavior really, I would say, similar to what we saw at COVID. Do you agree with that or no?
Yeah, almost like the waves of COVID we were getting afterwards, like the Delta,
Oh, totally,
yeah, of
totally.
like a spike of uncertainty. And unfortunately, right now, this spike of uncertainty is just keeps getting sort of delayed. And like, it's like we're on a 90-day pause. Like, what does that 90-day pause mean for me having a job
Exactly
in three
right.
months? Yeah.
Exactly right. And so that has a lot to do with sort of the pause in that. There's also the international, right? So there's a shift, and I've actually got some. I have optimism, and so and I'll tell you the reason why. I mean, I think so. Yes, there's the last minute decision making is a big part of this economic uncertainty. It's you know like you said, I don't know if I'm going to have a job in a month, and so that's causing those things. Also, generally international travel created bigger booking windows. We're not seeing any international travel. So if your Americans are booking flights to Europe and myriad other international destinations, Europeans are not coming here. Canadians are not coming here. Asians are going to Europe. We're finding instead of going to, and we know that through our Europe inventory. So we know that, and through a couple of partnerships that we have with Asia. So we're seeing a lot of that. Now, to me, the good news is that we are going to start. I am anticipating that we're going to that that it's May right now, and it's very uncomfortable if June is at a 35% occupancy. I understand that must be brutal, and 35 is a low number. I don't think that's what the number is, but I'm just throwing that number out there. But I do think that there should be a little bit of a patience and a waiting game on this, because I think that June numbers will go up in June. That's what I think. Um, so I think it's that delay is there. I think that because we are looking at no international travel, I think drive-tos are going to be a big deal, right? So obviously, airfare, whatever, is remaining high. I think, again, not really wanting to travel to Europe and vice versa. They're opting for destinations that are driving distance, reducing overall transportation expenses, right? So that leaves folks in New Orleans saying, I'm not going to maybe go to Paris, but I am going to go to Orange Beach. And so I'm in San Francisco. Maybe I won't go to Thailand this year, but I will go to Lake Tahoe. And I think that's really, really good for our industry. Because I think that these drive-to locations like Tahoe and Orange Beach tend to be a little bit more short-term rental-y than they are hotel-y. And so I think that's kind of some of the stuff that we're seeing right now. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, and we're definitely seeing some of that. I agree that it's not necessarily a I'm not going to book for my trip in June. It's just I'm waiting to book my trip in June. We have seen sort of bookings come in. They've just come in much shorter to the stay date than we've seen in the past.
Exactly, and we're doing well, and I think we're doing well, better relative to some other OTAs, and I think it's for the reason of what our value proposition is. So I think and I think it's really safe to say the other is I think value, right? So last minute is just better value. It just is, and so that's another reason that people are sort of pausing and waiting on it a little bit. And so I think all of these things together, I think having a last minute strategy, and I'm not just saying this, I really am not. Having a last minute strategy now is paramount, and I think it is not just for this summer. I think it just is moving forward. I'd love to kind of dig in, if we wanted to, into the sort of closing booking window, the reasons behind it, and you noted that a lot of it is post COVID. So I think that sort of digging into maybe what some of the reasons are why on there might be interesting for us to do. So yeah, but
maybe before you do that, can you just define in your mind for me, like, what is last minute? Like, how short is that? Because imagine last minute for hotels is maybe different than last minute for vacation rentals.
Yeah, so our average lead time is 21 days. Our window is 29, but our average lead time is about 3 weeks. Now it depends on market, right? So we look at some markets at 7 days, other markets it's 28 days. So obviously that's very market dependent. We do notice, interestingly enough, in a lot of our urban locations, it's a little bit of a smaller lead time, right? So, which makes sense with that sort of hotel link there, which I think is a little bit more urban, right? So, but I would say it's within 29 days, 28 days. Let's say 3 to 4 weeks as a lead time. Yeah, yeah, and I also anticipate, and I'm excited to see in my data in June and July. But I do anticipate that this summer's our lead time is going to be a lot shorter than it was last summer.
So now, like, let's get into and why do you think people and why have you seen this sort of and last minute expand?
Yeah, I think so. Again, it's a little bit of this is like sort of piecing together our traveler data, right, with our lead times and things like that. I think a big part of this sort of post-COVID reason that last minute is a big deal is sort of this next gen traveler, which I think is a really prime traveler, and I think it's our industry is primed to capture them. We just have to capture them, and I think I've got opinions on things that as an industry we need to be better at in order to capture them, because if we do, I think it's an incredible tailwind for us, because I think that they travel a lot. I think they do travel last minute. I think they travel on weekdays. And so that kind of squirrely gap night situation could be fixed generally, right? Based on just why are they traveling that way? Well, they're traveling from home. They're working from home, just not their home, right? So I think that we're seeing a lot of that. There's a stat out there that the next gen traveler, that's Gen Z millennial traveler, travels about 8 or 9 times a year. And they generally travel in micro vacations, and their check-in times are higher historically Sunday to Wednesday than they are for other generations. In other words, they are traveling more. They're traveling on these micro vacations, and they're traveling during the week. And what that has started telling us is that kind of that digital nomad, perhaps, or just I live in San Francisco, and why not go work from Tahoe for 5 days? So there's a lot of that we're seeing, and I think that as an industry we should be able to capture them. But I do think that there's a lot. So I think that has a lot to do with it. There's been a lot of uncertainty since COVID. We talked about that. I think that's a big part of it, and yeah, I think those to me are kind of the main things, because we are seeing that window is mostly millennials and Gen Z that are booking out of that window.
Do you see what's happening now sort of different than what we've seen in the past in terms of the types of properties, whether it be price tier or bedroom count, that are sort of more likely to be booked last minute through Whimstay than other properties?
Yeah, I can really only speak for us on that, but yeah, I mean the 2 to 4 bedroom is our sweet spot in the ADR. That $300 to $400 ADR is definitely a sweet spot for that. And so, and luxury is really interesting with us. We get luxury bookings, but they're generally outside our 29-day window. So it's just, you're just not, and it makes sense why, right? The one that tends to baffle me a little bit is the rise in group travel within the window. So we're seeing a rise in group travel through the window, which I think also speaks to kind of value and people wanting and sort of, let's get a bang for the buck, or let's share this thing out a little bit. But you wouldn't generally, I think logic would tell you that a 15-person friend trip to 30A isn't generally something you do 2 weeks beforehand. But we are starting to see that, and so that could also be part of. So 2 to 4 bedrooms are a big part of that. But if you kind of go and look and dig in just a little bit, some of those 9 to 10 bedrooms are also doing better. Let's say better than you would think. But let's say generally price out your 2 to 4 bedrooms, condos, homes. If you've got multi-units, those do exceptionally well, right? Like in vacation spots on a lake, on a mountain, urban spots do exceptionally well. So yeah.
No, I recently I've got a property up in North Georgia and got a 11-day booking for 10 people with a 1-day lead time.
I know. It's like, what?
Like, who are you and how did this come together?
And so it's like, and I think, let me ask you this question. Was your immediate assumption they're having a party?
Not for an 11-day
Right.
stay.
Right.
My immediate, I don't even know what I thought. What I do know is
that's what's insane, is that we're seeing it. And so I think it comes down to, hey, we want to travel. We want to get out. We want to do these things. It's like it's summer and it's nice out, and maybe the kids are going nuts. And so it's like, it's really, really important for people to be, and it's just an important thing to do. I think, Europeans, I think, I really envy sort of how they value, I think, sort of vacation and rest time a little more than we do. And so I hope I get to a time when I can do that. That time is not right now. Unfortunately, you get the out of office. It's like, I'll be back August 1st. I'm like, oh man, good for you. But I do think that we need to, I think it's really important. Look, I think getting out and going out, even if you are doing that and working from, a cabin in North Georgia and the North Georgia mountains with 11 of your friends, you can still work and do that. And I think I hope as a society, we can start to value that more, because I think it's really important. It becomes, I don't want to go on a tangent about this, but I do think, you tend to be able to work a little bit better. You're a little more productive. Everybody's saying relationships are better, so anyway, but yes, we are seeing group travel in a last minute window. Seems odd, but it's happening. And so, yeah.
So as someone might be thinking about their sort of last minute strategy, how much of that strategy do you think it should be of like the platforms you're listing on, the pricing you're sort of, and you talked about like, oh yeah, like just go on some of the other platforms and lower your price and hope and pray. Like, I assume it's a combination of all those things that actually lead to getting booked last minute. So what do you suggest to people if they're trying to think about their last minute booking strategy and like a holistic view of like their overall booking strategy? Because I don't think anyone wants to get booked last minute.
No, they don't. And so I think the preference is that they don't have a diverse distribution strategy and have a reason behind what you're doing, right? And so there are certain OTAs, and do the research because it's different by market, right? But generally, Vrbo is going to be very good for 180 to 90 days out, right? And Airbnb is going to be really good for 90 to 30 days out, and we're really good for 30 days and under. So if you had, and you can substitute booking in there and wherever you want. I think booking's tends to have a little bit of a longer booking window as well. So have a strategy on that. Obviously, have a dynamic pricing tool. That goes without saying. Have and be intelligent about it, right? I love Ben Coleman, who I don't know if you know Ben, but a lot of us know Ben, but he's talk to somebody like that, right? That really focuses on pricing and has a really, I would say, distinct strategy around how to price, when to price, and I think and he's got his own company. He's going to kill me. I forget the name of his company right now, but look him up. You can find him. But I think just having having intention behind your distribution strategy and your pricing, and it's amazing how much it works. It's like figuring out how optimization, right? Little thing like optimizing your listing, like how I would say the sort of the high conversion rate of a truly optimized listing versus a non-optimized listing. It's not all that sexy, but inevitably it's going to get you more bookings. Having a diverse distribution strategy that has intention behind it, and having a pricing strategy that has intention behind it, it's a converter. It just is, because you're capturing everybody. You're going to capture the folks that have maybe the families at that 180-day mark, right? You're going to be capturing whatever it is, group travel or whatever is 60 days out. And then you're going to be capturing the digital nomad, and you're going to be capturing the Gen Z or the millennial traveler, these incredible travelers that are traveling 15 days out. Capture all of them, right? And so I know that sounds obvious, but you would be shocked at sort of how willy-nilly I think people are about their pricing and their distribution, and sort of having a strategy behind it. 180 to 90 for Vrbo, 90 to 30 for Airbnb, 30 and under for us, and then price it correctly. I think that's a good place to start.
So how do you guys go about actually getting guests onto your platform? Because and where guests go, that's where listings go, right? So, and how have you guys gone about sort of building demand onto Whimstay?
Yeah, so we were very organic for a long time, and there was reasons, by design. I know you sort of said at the beginning of the show that we've been around a while. We actually haven't, right? We're only 3.5, 4 years old. So 4.5 years old, maybe. It seems like a longer time for me, but at any rate, it's so. So we were very, very organic by design. I think we needed to ensure we had enough supply. We needed to ensure that our system was where we wanted our system to be, and now we feel like we're good in those spots. I had our growth on the supply side, so it never feels like it's enough. And so I don't think we have enough, and we need more and more and more, because we do have bounce markets. We do have people searching in places where we don't have properties yet. And so we do have to continue to focus on that. But we do think we're at a spot now where we can do it. So about 5-6 months ago, we then decided now we're going to make a marketing push. We hired a head of marketing, Lily Lopez, and she's got an awesome team, Nicole and Katie and Val, and they're amazing. And so we now have a really, really robust marketing department and all of the things that go along with it. I was just in a Q3 initiatives meeting with our marketing team just now, or with Lily, and she sort of went through everything. And a lot of it is stuff that I don't necessarily understand, but any of the socials, right? So Instagram and TikTok and Facebook, we've got ads on that now. We've got ads on TV Connect now. So you could be watching Hulu or something and see a Whimstay ad pop up. We've got, so we're doing all the social stuff. We've got video commercials on TikTok and things like that, as well as We had no social media presence, right? We had very little social media presence. Now we're starting to build that up, which is really important, particularly if you're talking about kind of the Gen Z millennial. And that's a tough one to kind of build up a little bit. But so that's what we're doing. So we just recently started to get aggressive on that, and I think it's bearing fruit. It's good.
Yeah, and for the bookings that you guys are getting through the platform, and I doubt you have hard data on this, but would love to just hear what what you think of, like, how much do you think you guys are actually like creating, sort of inducing new demand into these properties that would have otherwise not been booked, versus like, you might have gotten booked, or like, do you see that you're actually like, I'm getting significant incremental demand for these properties?
So how do you measure incrementality? It's like that's the thing that I want to know the most, right? Because that's where that is where we have our value. If we're taking a booking from you from Airbnb, then we don't have value, right? We're just taking something that was going to get booked on Airbnb and someone just decided to wait. So one of the ways that we figured out to do it was actually to talk to our travelers about it. And so that was kind of one of the best ways to measure what we consider incrementality. So we feel really good about it. One thing that's happening that we are now learning is happening all the time is that the trip is being booked based on finding the value. So in other words, I hate to keep using this example, but I'm in San Francisco and I'm like, what do I want to do this weekend? Going to Whimstay and saying that's $180 a night to stay in Lake Tahoe for the weekend. Let me go and do that. And so the travel is based on the value, right? So we're finding there's a lot of that. And so that's one way that we can prove our incrementality. I think that knowing folks that are choosing us and then saying we are choosing you for a very, very specific thing is another way that we can measure incrementality, and we're starting to find that. So I can't promise you that we are 100% incremental. What I can promise you is that our goal is to be 100% incremental. That's how we're sort of marketing ourselves to travelers. Hey, if you are looking for something very specifically like this at this time, doing this kind of thing, then do this. If you are spontaneous minded, and I don't know if I love the word spontaneous minded, because there's a lot of, there's some weight to that, right? But I mean, I think it's that, the use us if you want to do this, right? Don't use us because you wanted to, you booked an Airbnb and then canceled it, and then waited and then checked and then canceled it, and don't do that. And so there's a lot of that. So I think that's one way to do it. If you could, Jamie, if you could tell us a good way to measure incrementality, I would love to know, because I think it's like, that's the key for us. And I think it's what our aim is. It's what our goal is. I think we can say we're accomplishing it. I really do. I can honestly say that, with a straight face. I can say that. So, but there's some mystery to it. So I don't know.
No, I love the sort of guest interviews, the and sort of idea around inducing demand with lower price, I think is a big one for this industry. Like, there's not enough lower prices on the weekdays. There's not enough lower prices during the off season. Like, that's what the hotel industry does really well, is like, I'm an economist. Economists love to save money. Like, the big economist conference is in January in Chicago, because the hotel rates are so freaking cheap.
That is hilarious that the Economist Conference is in January in Chicago. That is the most perfect thing I've ever heard in my life. You guys are a different breed.
But you think about, like, there are guests that are out there that are searching for deals. They're willing to take a trip if the price point is right. And then just so many properties that go unused, unbooked, because they're not sort of testing what that low level of rate is. And it doesn't have to be like I'm putting that rate out 90 days in advance. It could very much be a low rate last minute strategy that you pair it with a Whimstay where you don't even have to show that low rate on Airbnb if you want to maintain your rate
Keep the
integrity there.
premium price on Airbnb because you might get that booked out on Airbnb, of course.
Right.
Of course, right? And so, yeah, that ideally that's what we want. Keep your premium price over here. Allow us to do this. We have an audience. We are growing that audience. It's a specific audience. We're not taking, I don't know, we're not trying to take your Airbnb bookings. We're not complementary. And so that's what we're doing. We are a complement to the others, and we are filling in nights that otherwise would go unsold, or creating nights that otherwise wouldn't have been created based on value alone. And I think so. It's really, really important. And I think if you look at I know I'm pounding the table on this kind of next gen traveler and the digital nomad, but that's sort of how they roll, and they travel a lot. And so I think like sort of keeping them in mind, and they're great tenants because you need Wi-Fi and all the things that you need, but they want a short-term rental. They do. There's an experience piece to it. They want to do this nonsense on the Instagram and the TikToks and all that, and they want to be doing those things. And so and maybe we'll talk about your home we found. And if they love it, they will talk about it and look at this great place that I found, and then they will at you and all that stuff. So I think there's a lot of benefit to capturing an audience that is their behavior. And I think the audience is a hell of a lot bigger than people think.
So I'm looking ahead like to this summer and even beyond, like what are some of the other trends that you're seeing across the industry? Like some of the like we talked about international travel. Like one of the things that I think is super interesting is how much international really impacts shoulder seasons. Like
Yes.
domestic drives summer, right? But like international really does matter during these shoulder periods. And I suspect that, and that's sort of how last minute can go too, of like, and you're good and good properties during peak season are going to get booked out. Um, and I also wonder how sort of last minute strategies work into cancellation policies because, like, it seems too like if you do get a last minute cancellation, and no matter like what your cancellation policy is, you want to get that rebooked, right? So
Absolutely.
being able to have a sort of attractive offering there. But what, if any, are other trends are you watching closely?
Hmm. I hope that I didn't sort of say all of them. I think so. If you look at shoulder season for the summer, let's look at shoulder season for the summer, right? I was just in Palm Springs um, last week, right? So they're sort of bucking up onto their shoulder season, and we a lot of people close shop and those types of things. I know it's 110 degrees in Palm Springs, but there's a ton of value I think in being able to experience places in shoulder season. I hope one trend that we'll start to see. So maybe 110 degrees in Palm Springs in summer is aggressive, but if we go past summer just a tad, right, and we start to look at what we would consider sort of mud seasons in places like Park City and Telluride, and it's really the fall in those places is stunning, is beautiful. I am hoping a trend that we'll start to see over the course of next year is people starting to do that. So starting to take advantage again of the opportunity of seeing parts of the country that you've never seen before in times when it's not crushed with human beings. And so, and I, again, like that's such a short term rental, that could be such a short term rental niche. No one wants to go to Park City and stay in a Hyatt for 3 days in April. No one wants to do that, right? But it might make sense to go to Park City and stay in a rental and hike in April, and as it bucks up into May and flowers start to spring, or maybe the opposite of that when leaves start to change and people aren't there, and restaurants and everything is less expensive, and you're still in a gorgeous part of the world. So it's something that our marketing team is looking at, is being able to help, I think, educate travelers to parts of the country and the world that are really beautiful and what we would consider to be shoulder seasons. I hope that to be a trend in 2025 and 2026. I know it's something that we're working on, and we're starting to see a little bit of an early hit on it. I only mentioned Palm Springs because we started to say, hey, like maybe book out in Palm Springs and Scottsdale, for example, and and experience what that's like. And we've gotten some bookings from it. So we do think that that's something that could be potentially pretty cool.
Yeah, that's absolutely a trend we're seeing in a lot of the more popular areas of Europe of like, and I think travelers are getting tired of like and how crowded France, Spain, Italy are during June and July, of what, and it's beautiful. It's less crowded to go in October, November, and in some of these city, like I go to the Vacation Rental World Summit every year, and it's usually sort of fall period and sort of asking people like, "How's the shoulder season this year?" And they're like, "Man, summer never ended. We're still in it." Like, and we get to end of October, and you'd think we'd be slowing down, but it's just not happening. So
So can I ask you, I don't know if you know the answer to this and could be anecdotal, but are those generally European travelers traveling within Europe, or are those Americans coming over in October and November?
it's a good mix, and I think sort of to the trend you were talking about of digital nomads, people being able to work more from anywhere. Of why go to Spain in July when it's just and we're gonna sweat and just and bake in the sun when
Like
we could
I'm on a beach in Mallorca and there's 9,000 people here. Like that's
right.
not that fun, you know? I can't get a dinner reservation. That's not that great, right? And so and it's 105 degrees, you know? Yeah, and I think yeah, and Indian summer, by the way, the thing is in Europe and a lot of parts of California. So you can travel to parts of you can go to parts of San Diego, San Francisco, the Bay Area, all the way up in Seattle in October and November, and it's gorgeous. It's 75 degrees, right? So
And I know you called it out with Gen Z and millennials and sort of take advantage, but where we're also seeing this trend really play out is with the baby boomers now getting in retirement, that they're not and sort of and now that they're retired, like they can travel whenever they want. So they don't want to be in somewhere during peak season. They want to wait for either the shoulder or off periods to go. It's cheaper, it's less crowded. They can. They're willing to travel on a Monday. They're really willing to come back on a Saturday, like weekday. My parents are retired now, and whenever I see them, they're like, "What day of the week is it?"
my mom said that to me the other day because she paints all the time. I love it. She's just crushing it, and she's painting. And I was like, she's like, hey, how about we barbecue? I'm like, it's Tuesday, Mom. It's Tuesday. Can't barbecue today. And so, oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Anyway, I love it for her, and I love it for my dad. And so, but my dad never really. He just always kind of worked from home and worked, and there was no Saturday. It was just whatever. But anyway,
But I also love it for the industry because if we can spread demand off of the weekends, off of peak periods, like there's so much potential opportunity to grow revenue, to grow occupancy without needing more supply, without needing to add more amenities. This is adding incremental demand and based on the additional flexibility that travelers now have.
yep. And I say one. I want to say something. It's a soapbox. It's a smaller soapbox, but it's a soapbox nonetheless. I think that I have a feeling about something. So the baby boomers you're talking about, the next gen traveler that we were talking about before, as an industry, we have the opportunity to capture them. As an industry, that window I think is open. I don't think it's always going to be open, and I think that it's mandatory for us as an industry. This is going to sound insane coming from someone who founded an OTA. Okay, I think every host and property manager has to focus on getting a direct booking. That's what I think. And I think there's a tail reason to it. And I think there's sometimes this sort of knocking of heads of like, oh, OTAs, I don't like OTAs. I want to do direct bookings. And I don't think that that's the mentality that it should be. I think the mentality should be this. An OTA, I'll speak for me because it's our OTA. Whimstay is a traveler acquisition tool. That is all we are. We have a 5% commission. That 5% commission is a traveler acquisition tool. And I think that if there is a concerted effort to say, okay, great, that traveler that came in from that OTA, 5%, there you go, great. Now my job is going to be to do everything in my power to bring that traveler back direct next time. And if that's the mentality, I think everybody wins. Because if that traveler decides they want to go back to that market again, they'll choose your place. But if they don't want to go back to that market, they'll say, well, I had a great experience at a short-term rental. I want to choose a short-term rental again. And they'll probably use an OTA to do that. So it kind of is like that rising boat with the rising boat rises all, whatever. And I think as an industry, we need to be really, really, really careful about doing things that hotels wouldn't do. Because I think there's a lot of, I told you I was going to be on a soapbox, but if you don't mind giving me the 2 seconds, I'd appreciate it. We just see lots and lots of instances of hosts and property managers doing stuff like canceling, for example, on the day of check-in, and just canceling it because they got a better price somewhere else. That person is never going back to a short-term rental again. And if that's a Gen Z or a Gen X or whatever it is, and they like to go onto TikTok and talk, and so there's an element of we need to, I think hospitality first. And if you do think that way, I think that you'll get more direct bookings, number one. And also we will start to capture those people that and really start to bring them in. I think it needs to be, I hope it's an initiative throughout the entire industry, because we see enough of kind of nefarious stuff like that it's just, I don't know. I think it's really, really important. I think it's really vital that we capture this generation of traveler, because if we do, I don't know if we'll surpass hotels. I don't know if we'll become the ubiquitous form of lodging and all of travel, but certainly it'll get up there, right? And so I think it's a really important thing to do. So that's enough of me on my soapbox, but I do kind of like to talk about it.
I totally agree. And we all sort of carry the torch for the industry and one bad experience can ruin an entire sector opportunity for that guest. And like, I applaud some of the other OTAs on the work they're doing to remove bad actors, to have more stringent sort of policies around if you're canceling on guests, and having them actually be meaningful. I think
meaningful is the important part, right?
Yeah, it is something that helps everyone. Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So, Alex, it's been a pleasure having you on. If people want to find more about Whimstay, they want to follow you, how would they do that?
So you can go to LinkedIn. I think that's probably a good way to do it. Follow us on Instagram. I've never said that in my life. I'm 49 years old. Follow us on Instagram, but I just did. First time. Follow us on TikTok, I guess. Follow us on Facebook. Do people do that still? But yes, do all those things. And then go check out our site. And just, if you're a host and you're a property manager and you think this value proposition makes sense to you, there's a really easy list your properties. Takes 10 minutes, do it. And it's pretty quick self-onboarding. Takes an hour to get live. So, in 10 minutes of your time. So, yeah, that's the best way to do it. But follow us on all those things.
Awesome, Alex. Thank you so much for joining and being a guest. And I'll see you around at one of the shows coming up.
Always a pleasure, brother. Thanks, Jamie.